Now, the COVID-19 pandemic is having global effects.
Yes.
So I'm joined now by organizational development consultant Anthony Watkins, and of course, well-known motivational speaker.
Yes.
Talk some more about this topic that's gripping the entire world at this point.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Watkins, what are your overall impressions of COVID-19?
Well, this thing is massive. It's huge, and I mean, the world will not be the same post-COVID-19. The thing is, how we talk about it is interesting, though. We talk about it as, it's a frightening thing and it's scary. Well, I think it's massive, it's impactful, it's significant, but to call it scary or frightening is really to ascribe a human feeling to COVID-19.
Right.
It's massive and it's impactful, and we get scared and we get frightened. But I mean, that aside, the thing is, we label it as something scary and frightening. But the truth is, it really is hugely impactful. I mean, nothing will be the same after COVID-19.
No, yourself, I have to try and remember when I'm standing next to you to keep a certain distance apart.
Yes.
Children are home from school. People are working from home like they haven't done before. What do you see as the impact, the human impact, the people impact, not only here in Trinidad, but of course across the world?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, it's massive change. If you notice that people have to stand differently, they have to socialize differently, they have to engage with one another differently. People, of course, some of their normal behavior patterns and their habits, where they go to socialize, what they do in their spare time, all of that has changed. The workplace has changed, relationships have changed. And the issue of change really is extremely impactful and challenging for people. It means people have to let go of old habits. They have to learn to do new things. And that can be very stressful. And when people are stressed, it doesn't take very long before they start to experience some kind of distress. And of course, that distress we see in terms of emotional, social, behavioral, and mental aberration. All kinds of dysfunctions come up. And you will see it around with people.
Now, in terms of people and the whole, we're talking about people here. And we're in a newsroom, we see people here, some people may not be at work right now because they're working from home. Governments are battling, they're trying to figure out how do we battle this monster that has gripped the world. In terms of companies, trying to figure out, what do we do now? What kind of policies to put in place?
Yes.
What are the options available to people on the whole in dealing with this pandemic?
Well, let's think about what people can do, first of all, individually. Long before we think about governments, I think we need to speak to people individually. There's a need, of course, to focus on what you can control. Something like this really gives you the feeling that the whole world is falling apart. This is the end of everything. And we need to focus on what we can control. We can control our thoughts. We can control, by controlling our thoughts, control our feelings. We can manage our perspectives on things. We can manage how we communicate. Now, that is a huge challenge when in this kind of context. What we can also control, of course, is our relationship with people. And how do we relate to people? What do we expect from them? Are we as tolerant? Are we as compassionate? Are we as understanding as we need to be with others? Because the truth is, other people are going through, terribly convulsive changes in their lives. When we think about it, I mean, some people will say, well, in a situation like this, you're stuck up for 3 months' food.
Right.
Hello, some people have a problem stocking up for a day. So this thing is real. I mean, it's making a real difference to people who earn their livelihood and who are not well compensated or who don't have full revenue streams. And it is frightening. It can be frightening for people. They can react with a lot of panic. And therefore, while we may tell them ourselves to try to manage our thoughts, a very important issue is how do we relate to people when they may be out of control? We may see people getting quiet. Do we put it up to them just being moody, or do we understand that they may be trying to grapple with something?
Now, I may be just a couple of years younger than you, but in my lifetime, I have not seen anything like this since I've been alive.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything like this grip the world before, like this has?
No, I mean the only thing that I could think of that really gripped the world would have been 9/11. 9/11. I was not in Trinidad. I was actually in Grenada at the time. And I felt very helpless, not being at home, to see something happen and wonder if I would get back home, what are some of the implications of that. So it really puts you in a very uneasy kind of situation. Now, what it does, and I mean, even as we talk 9/11 and this in terms of how it's challenging organizations, families, communities, what it also does, it puts us in a place where we have to pause. This is a time for slowing down and really, in a lot of ways, a time for people to reflect and to recalibrate some things. What really is important? The boss who was really an arrogant boss, what is he thinking today? He's just as much a victim of this as anybody else in his organization.
Because as officials have been saying, this disease respects no age,
no
status,
none,
no whether you're a manager, employee, what country you're in.
So I mean, there are times when we have to ask ourselves in our organizations, have we been devaluing people who are human beings who come to work as parents, as spouses, as partners, and who we treat in a particular kind of way? But COVID says everybody is the same, all right? It's an opportunity too for us to look at our values. What really has been important? How important was that car, the house, the money, the results, the strategy, the market share? How important is that in today's environment? And it really is a repositioning of who and what we are and what is important and the ways in which we have become inordinately attached to things in the world.
And as we walk a bit here, my cameraman is going to have to do some backtracking here a bit.
Yes.
But you know, we're talking about organizations just now, and I know this is your area of expertise.
Yes.
What do you see are the organizational impacts, the direct impacts, let's say, for instance, from the smallest organization to big time global companies? Everybody's battling and trying to figure out how do we survive this? How do we come out alive?
Yes, I mean,
after this?
certainly certainly the loss of revenue, but I think very importantly it's the issue of meaning. We are in a business. Is this really just about profit? Is this only about bottom line? What is our organization's relationship to the community in which we live and work? What is that kind of relationship? What is the organization's relationship? How does it treat its people?
Right.
You know, what is the structure of the organization? Do we give people a voice in the space? Or is this a place where literally it's the bosses who rule and who say how things ought to be? So for me, the disruption, the shaking up of the thing is really about putting people in a different place and inviting people now to see things a little differently. That's a challenge for everyone, because even people who have a particular position in the organization, maybe lower down on the totem pole, may be accustomed being there.
True.
And may not recognize that they now have the space to speak up, to step up, to stand up, you know? And of course, how does a boss recognize and the inappropriateness of the arrogance and the hubris and develop a perspective of real caring for people and with a certain amount of humility, understanding that we really are all people.
Now, I know you are not a psychic. You're a motivational speaker and a businessman. But in the beginning of our conversation, you spoke about the world changing.
Yes.
We know, of course, as you just mentioned, organizations may change how they do business after this, because they come to certain realizations throughout this crisis. So how do you see us, Trinidad and Tobago, the world, surviving and coming out of this? And how do you see life possibly changing? What do you think may happen?
Well, one of the things is that we do not learn from experience. We learn from reflection on experience. So we're going to have this experience.
Right.
And when it dies, the question is, do we just move on, pick up the pieces and move on? Or do we pause as individuals, as families, as communities, as organizations, or as a country, and ask ourselves some fundamental questions? You know, what did this mean for us? How did we manage this? What was it about us that helped us to make it through this scenario? What was it about us that challenged us in the current environment? So I think that kind of thinking, that kind of reflection is where we're going to get the value. It's not going to come from just having been through the experience. And there are gifts in the situation. I mean, I don't want to talk about the gifts now when people in pain, you know, because you will say, no, gifts, you know, we're struggling now. But there will be some gifts. And I mean, as there's an old African proverb that says, to stumble is not to fall, but to move forward more quickly. So we stumbling. We burst our toe and the shoe might be flapping, but there's a way in which this thing can position us to be better than we were prior to. Individuals can be better, families can be better, but it requires sober reflection, analysis, and asking ourselves, what is the gift? How have I reevaluated what's important in life and what's not?
We've been through the struggle and we're trying to come out better people.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Of course, joining me here, Principal Consultant at ODYSSEY Consulting.
Yes, that's correct.
Organization Development Consultant.
All right, okay, you got it.
Well-known
You got it,
motivational speaker,
yeah.
Anthony Watkins, to just talk to us a bit about how will this COVID-19 pandemic affect people here in Trinidad and Tobago as well as around the world.
Yeah. Okay.